Andrew Neil blasted French President Emmanuel Macron for being culpable as he exposed France's jab rollout chaos as the country heads for another lockdown. France saw its biggest one-day jump in COVID cases today since its second lockdown in November, and the government prepared to further tighten limits on people's movement. The health ministry reported 38,501 new infections, pushing the total during the pandemic to 4.15 million. The 7-day average of new cases rose to over 26,000 per day. Former BBC broadcaster Andrew Neil reacted to the latest cases and warned Mr. Macron was culpable over France's mess with its vaccine rollout. He wrote on Twitter, "France's vaccine rollout is a mess and President Macron is culpable. The only antidote to a third wave, bar lockdown, is widespread vaccination. I expect at least Greater Paris, Île-de-France, to be in lockdown by the weekend." Very sad. Government spokesman Gabriel Attal said earlier today that tougher restrictions will be imposed in some regions including Paris from this weekend to battle against the spike in infections. The government is set to then outline new restrictions on Thursday. This could include impartial lockdowns such as the weekend lockdowns already imposed, as well as a nationwide nightly curfew in parts of the Mediterranean Riviera and some areas of the north. Mr. Macron said today, "We will take pragmatic and regionalized decisions." The government tracks ICU numbers closely as they are the ultimate measure of France's ability to deal with the crisis. Meanwhile, Paris had 1,177 people in ICU on Tuesday as the number of deaths in hospital rose by 247 to 91,437 today. In the second nationwide lockdown in November, the number of people in ICU peaked at 4,919, on November 16. During the first lockdown in March-April 2020, France had more than 5,000 people in ICU for 25 consecutive days, more than 6,000 for 17 consecutive days. Despite the jump in new cases, the number of COVID patients in intensive care units, ICU, fell slightly, the first drop in nearly 2 weeks, easing by 20 to 4,219. Health Ministry data showed. The government is known to track ICU numbers closely as they are the biggest measure of France's ability to deal with the crisis. Meanwhile, Paris had 1,177 people in ICU on Tuesday as the number of deaths in hospital rose by 247 to 91,437 today. In the second nationwide lockdown in November, the number of people in ICU peaked at 4,919, on November 16.